Chapter 4. Now, you've hung in there through 3 chapters that unpack the story of the Maccabees, that very straightforward history, to an extent, of God's battle with oppressors and how that resolved. When we get to the book of Judith, we're dealing with something rather different. It's a fictional story. And the author is still answering the same kind of question. How will deliverance come to God's people? How will God deliver his people? But it tells the story in a rather different way this time. Instead of straightforward history that we get with the Maccabees, now we have a fictional story. You could consider it a kind of a extended parable about how God will deliver his people. It has to do with some of the same kinds of things, courage, faith, and so forth, but under very different circumstances. For starters, the author kind of projects, if you will, back into history in the distant past, this story. So the story of Judah takes place against the backdrop of the Chaldeans. It's the name that the author gives to the Babylonian Empire. And we know right off the bat that it's a fictional story because he describes Nebuchadnezzar as the ruler or emperor, and we know that historically that's not correct. So the author is dropping us a clue here. This is kind of a once upon a time sort of story. And yet there are enough historical details that are accurate that allows the author to tell, again, answer the question, how will God deliver his people? It tells the story of Judith, a Judean woman who displays unshakable courage, an absolute faith, and maybe most of all for this story, uncompromising standards in sticking with what God has commanded her to do. The story, which I won't reveal all of, but it opens up this way. The Israelites once again are under the threat of attack, this time from Nebuchadnezzar. And they try to plan about what to do or how to compromise. They feel like they must give in. But Judith is raised up, and she declares that God would not have them surrender and give up their way of life and surrender their identity to an ungodly ruler. She has a plan to stop this attack. And the plan is very distinctive to Judith. Judith is a woman of faith, and she's a beautiful woman. And so everything she does is on the basis of her trust in God, but she also knows how to use what she has. She knows that she will appeal to the commanding general of the enemy forces, that he will be attracted to her. And she'll go and interact with him, and she'll initiate and execute a plan, so to speak, that will absolutely deliver God's people, but it will do it in a way that's a total surprise. I won't ruin the end of the story for you, because it really is a delightful story, but the truth is written all the way through it. Judith executes her plan, but she never compromises her standards. She knows that she's attractive to the general, but he never lays a hand on her, even a finger on her. And she's able to take her plan from the beginning to the end while sticking with her careful disciplines of fasting, of prayer, of never eating the king's impure food. And it's almost hilarious how her and her helpmate that goes along with her into the enemy's camp, how they keep her from surrendering her standards or compromising. Judith never compromises. And because of that, God blesses her efforts and she delivers God's people. It's a wonderful story. It's a whimsical story in a way, but the truth is all the way through it. How will God deliver God's people? In the case of the story of Judith, by the unshakable convictions of a particular person and their obedience and faithfulness to God to never surrender their standards.